To each of you, if you support legislation, what tools would you like to see in those legislation? What tools do you need?
Thank you. A more formal process to identify product we know is unsafe or does not meet safety standards, and communicate that to the marketplaces versus only having intellectual property protection as the channel to communicate to that marketplace. That would be a tool that would be very useful.
Mr. Camel?
From my perspective, transparency is very important. So we have a lot of statistics about takedowns and sellers, but not necessarily how many of those sellers had sold counterfeit prior to the takedown procedure, or what is happening on the back end beyond those initial statistics. So at least from my perspective, the ability to use some of that data for research to study the problem further.
I would say information sharing is very important among all parties, is something critical for this particular issue to understand who's doing what. And also reporting requirements for particularly small sellers. Right now, I think in your bill, it's about 2 days. And I think it's important if we have a little longer, like the House bill has 10 days, I would encourage you to consider that as well.
I would say transparency, ranking member. Transparency equals accountability. Right? We can hold people accountable. We got to first figure out who they are. So we need that transparency first before any other remedy.
Okay. To Mr. Mudrick, Snowden, and Dugan, what collaborations or voluntary initiatives across or within stakeholder groups have you participated in? Have these been successful efforts? And are some marketplaces more cooperative than others?
As a member of the Toy Association, we work with our members, many of whom are manufacturers. Some retailers and online marketplaces are also members and have come to the table to have conversations. I have seen progress over the probably 8-year period that I've been involved in that conversation, specifically around, again, intellectual property protection, but have not seen progress at the table regarding these unsafe products or products that don't meet safety standards.
Mr. Snowden?
I think what we're seeing right now with attorneys general across the country, we have Utah, Illinois, Arizona, California. The AGs are setting up organized crime task force, which brings in all the parties, brings in retailers, brings in us, brings in rights holders. That's important because they're looking at it in a holistic point of view, which is the way we need to go and tackle this issue. This is organized crime. The key thing about them, they're organized. So we have to make sure we get organized on our side as well, and that takes all of us.
Mr. Dugan?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of progress in that regard. There are some online marketplaces that do cooperate. eBay is a great example of a great partner on the investigative side. I will tell you that none of the online marketplaces currently have the transparency to the level we're looking for to actually prevent crime. And the Attorney General's task forces that are being stood up that we're working very closely with that talk about increased penalties, tougher penalties. They talk about resources they want to add. They all say the same thing, right? The thing we need to make this work is transparency from the online marketplaces, which right now we don't have.
What do each of you believe has been the most successful strategy to counter illegal activity? Start with you, Mr. Mudrick.
I think persistence. Our internal efforts nonstop to communicate this, even when we feel like we're hitting a brick wall. I'm hopeful that one day we'll break through.
Ms. Camel?
Proactive approaches to dealing with this problem. So reactive approaches such as the notice and takedown procedures are very necessary, but when we see either marketplaces or brands really trying to take a proactive approach before it ever gets posted, we find those the most effective.
I would agree with the proactive nature of what past witness just said, but I would also add that it's important that what's been successful is being able to have the partnership with brands and rights holders. They know what's counterfeit and they know what's illegal. So working that angle and having us work together, I think, has been the most success.
What I've learned in my years investigating this crime is that we're not going to be able to arrest our way out of this problem. We do need proactive solutions to really stem the tide of this growth of organized retail crime. So proactive measures, but preventative measures have been the most effective, and I think will be the most effective going forward. And I believe this bill does that.
Mr. Dugan, I'm just going to jump